Today's episode of On the Ground Parenting is made possible by the generous donations of our listeners. To learn more, look in the show notes or listen to the end of the episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Ground Parenting. Muskoka Family Focused Parent Ed team is offering this podcast to you. Anyone who has children, whether you're a caregiver, whether you're the neighbor down the street who cares for those kids down the street, come and join us, have a listen. This week, we're continuing the conversation that we started last session with Alyson Schafer. We started to talk about family meetings. This time, we're going to get into what does a family meeting look like? How messy can it be? What do you get into? What are the topics? So, how to get started, family meetings, check it out. Wow. So, starting a family meeting.
If people want to get going?
Yeah.
Okay, a couple of basics. I mean, first of all, now we have Chat GPT, so you can probably throw this in and get all. AI is doing such a good job. But I would say a couple of core components that I would say, which is, first of all, your attitude about it, which is you really want to set the tone that it's a place that your kids want to come and that it's a place where they can be heard. And you really want the agenda to be mostly filled with things that are their problems. You know, if they want to get a guinea pig, write it down, say, and don't have a sidebar conversation with your partner saying like, we're not getting a guinea pig. We're going to kibosh this. You got to show up fresh. You got to show up real. And mostly things that end up on a list are usually your problem too. Like, so instead of saying mom wants to talk about why everyone's late for school, you can put it on Scott wants to talk about not people yelling at him for getting out the door in the morning. It's the same problem, but now you're putting it from the child's perspective. Mm-hmm. So I like to put the agenda, very few items. I want it to be things that in the moment when there's a conflict that we write down who wants to speak to this, who put it on the agenda. And certainly in the early days, I would start with not so much the problem solving of family conflict. I would say in the early days, just get together, say, what do we like about our family? What went well for us this week so that you start on a positive note? And then I would do problem solving around the great question of what would we like to do for family fun this weekend? Because you're still going to have to get to consensus. You're still going to have to get everybody on the same page. You're going to learn some of the family dynamics because you just know two kids are going to say, I want to go swimming. And the little kid in the family who is angry at his siblings is going to say, well, I don't want to go swimming. I want to go to a movie. And then there you are. Now you're going to have to figure out how do you get consensus because you cannot use Robertson's rules. No, it's not going to work in a family because they're going to set you up. They're going to try to make you divide and conquer and say, see, you always pick what they want. You don't like me. You have to really stick with consensus. And I think that if a situation like that happens, and it will, you can just say, hey, listen, we've been talking about swimming versus a movie for the last 10 minutes. We haven't seemed to be able to get everybody on the same page. So I think we'll just slate that till the next meeting. And then someone's going to say, are you kidding me? We're not doing either. We're not swimming. You're like, well, we couldn't come to consensus. We couldn't, And it could be that the two people who wanted swimming say, fine, let's do what Robbie wants. We'll go to the movie. Or somebody is going to say, well, what if we do the movie this week, but we do swimming next week? And you go, oh, well, that seems okay. How do people feel about that? They'll work to cooperate. This is why we do the family meeting. This isn't an inconvenience from the family meeting. This is actually you using the family meeting to improve sibling relationships. So don't feel badly about that. You're actually being very effective in that one area. So I would start with family fun. And then let's say that they all decided they were going to go swimming. Then you start giving out responsibilities. Well, who's going to call the pool to find out what time this open family swim is? Who wants to get the towels together? Start giving them jobs so that it becomes like a family collective. And I would do that for like probably the first 4 months. If you've got younger kids, that's a great place to start. And now they've got some of these skills. And so then when you bring in more contentious issues, you've had practice ground and they've had some practice ground. And hopefully you can tackle something that's a little bit more contentious.
Well, and that expansion of just that whole whatever the consensus, whether we're going to the movie, whether we're going swimming, whatever it is we're doing, that expansion piece, I think many people don't see that as the unfolding. That then becomes part of what the children get to do because most adults are accustomed to doing it all.
Right.
Mhm.
So that letting go of and opening up my mind to I don't have to make all the list. I can just facilitate that process with them.
Oh, can I? I mean, it's so interesting that on the one hand, I'm saying this is like very skills involved, and you have to do a lot of flexing for this to happen. But I would just tell you, like, probably the best thing is how much of that time I got back. Because suddenly I'm a parent who gets up in the morning. My kids get themselves up. They don't fight about what we're doing on the weekend. I have my cup of coffee. They're off doing their chores. I don't need to nag and remind them. I'm like, yeah, I front loaded a lot of work on this, but you really do raise these kids who are cooperative and competent and want to contribute and they want to help and they're reasonable. We had a magazine. Today's Parent was doing like a room makeover from like a child's room to a teen's room. And they came to the house and they assessed both my girls' bedrooms. And they decided that my one daughter's had the better room for the magazine inlay or whatever. So the other daughter was not going to get a room makeover. And the daughter who didn't get the room makeover said like, well, sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. That's great. I'm just happy for her. And I was like, what a mature perspective to have as a kid who's like a teenager. And in fact, it bothered her grandmother so much that her grandmother said, well, I'll pay for your room makeover. Like she, but she was really completely fine with it. And it's just like, those are the times where you have these little parenting wins where you just say, you know what, like I'm really raising good little human beings, like you get these little data points where you're like, you know what, they're like decent kids. And yeah, it takes work, but the proof is in the research. You will get those moments back where you're like, this is why I sat through all the crappy family meetings with everybody complaining and nobody coming to a decision. It's like I was busy making good human beings and it all worked out.
Yeah, and I think too about Virginia Satir and her whole,
Yes.
like the family of origin theory. Like basically what we're giving our kids is how they know how to relate with and treat other people.
Yes.
And so what you're talking about, like it's gritty work. Like you're front loading, but it's not like easy peasy. It doesn't look pretty as you've mentioned, but stick with it
Yeah.
because it's coming back to what you had mentioned in the earlier episode too about firm and friendly. That's a firm and friendly approach, and it's what our kids are going forward with in knowing how to be with other people.
And this is the part too, going back to our earlier discussion as well, which is the parents are overwhelmed with all the information that they have out there. And with that overwhelm, they don't have the confidence that they're doing the right thing. So they don't push through with consistency because they're kind of like, well, I'm not really sure this is the way to do it, or I'm not really sure this is important. And they question themselves. And so I feel like the greatest gift that I had was that I really knew and because of the privilege of my career of working with so many families, it never crossed my mind that maybe I'm doing the wrong thing. Maybe I shouldn't have family meetings, or maybe I'm off track here. Like that confidence is what allowed me to have the consistency. And my goodness, like if we look at any learning model, like if you want to teach a mouse to run through a maze, you don't want to be changing all the gates in the maze. You want the maze to be the same so that the mouse figures out how to get to the cheese, right? So a lot of parents in their overwhelm and in their lack of security about their methods, they keep changing things up and then the kids don't learn. And then that just makes for more chaos. And so I think having the theory, having the training, having the experience of working with so many families, that I could really nail the consistency piece, even when things weren't going perfectly in the moment. But knowing that I was just like fracking, I'm just chipping away at it, man, like a drop of water on a rock. I was just fracking my way through parenting, man. I just chipped away, knowing I had complete confidence that what I was doing was the most effective way of raising my kids. I just had that calm confidence through all of it but it was not always pretty. I don't want people to think that like I did not have these perfect days. There was all kinds of chaos, but I had this through line that just kept me sane, and it allowed me to have that consistency. And I hope people hear it in my conviction as we're talking. I hope that they can like just hear and believe that with this many years of experience with so many families over 20 years and all the training I've done and around the world with different cultures, it's like we're really on to something here, people. It's worth doing the work. And I think if I could give parents confidence, I think that would be one of the best gifts, to just have the confidence, because that allows you to be consistent.
I just really want to interject because I would love to just know if you have any advice for parents who are coming to the concept of parent meetings with older children.
Yeah. I mean, I actually think older children, they're harder to schedule because they've got their own lives. So you're definitely going to have to say when's a good time to talk or whatever. But you can still start the family meeting just talking about things like, if it's 1 year from today and we look back at our family life and we want to say that we had a good year, what would we have to make sure happened in this year? And let's start with having a goal in mind that's mutual to all of us, and then kind of working backwards. And what you'll find with older kids is they'll often want to talk about like your tone and your respect. And I know with my kids, for example, we talked about how we can sometimes talk down, like we can talk down to one another. The kids can get a little snotty to us, and we can get like a little parenting attitude to them. And so we decided we didn't want that. We didn't want to be a disrespectful family. We didn't want the tone. We didn't want the attitude. So we came up with this thing called level 3. And if it started to look like, one of us was getting like a little bit naggy or talking down and whatever, we would just say level 3, which is like, bring it up. Like we have decided as a family that we don't want to be this base. We don't want to be base. Not you, not me. And so my kids corrected me like, level 3, mom. I'm like, oh, good. Yep, that's my tone. Sorry, I'm falling back into parent speak. I'm getting back into the nagging. If you didn't have your head screwed on, how would you even remember how to go? I mean, like, it's so we just have these things that are just like these parenting lines that we just forget. If you like actually stop the clock, and like, that's a really ignorant thing to say to another human being. It's like, darn right, you need to tell me to level 3. I mean, it's just because that's what people say to children. It doesn't mean it's a nice thing to say to another human being. I want to talk to you more respectfully. So we had this thing called level 3. And I think that older kids can take on kind of more sophisticated ideas like that. And it's probably going to be about respect, and also about like, they really need wider boundaries. Like, I think we tend to think that things should happen on our timeline. So I'll give you an example in my family. Like, we still had family chores, but I'm like, you know what? My kitchen is chaotic if I expect you guys to unload the dishwasher and, whatever, and then I can't make dinner. And meanwhile, you're at choir practice or you're at a friend's house after school, or I'm like, how about I keep all the things that keep the house moving as my responsibilities, and the things that don't need timelines, like dusting or mowing the grass. Like, I don't care if the grass is long, like what, but we made an agreement that they would take the non-time sensitive jobs, but they had to be done before they got car privileges on the weekends. So I wouldn't drive them to a friend's house or take them to the mall. Thank God we lived in the country, so that really impacted them. But they thought that was quite reasonable, because the truth is they needed the entire week to decide when dusting fit in their schedule, because they're busy chatting with friends and going over here, and everyone's going over to the Dairy Queen, and I got to keep up with what everyone's. I'm like, I don't care, just long you got a whole week to figure it out. So I think you really have to kind of have wider boundaries for how they are going to run their own lives. That we got to kind of step back and not just assume that everything's going to be tickety-boo on our timeline, right? So I found family meetings were really helpful for letting them kind of show up as an adult and reorganizing the respect for the fact that they have a life.
Reorganizing the respect. I love that so much.
The image that came to mind for me when you were just talking, Alyson, is that, when you talked about broadening, I thought of a manual transmission, and we really need to put in the clutch before we change gears. We need to give that whole machine time to listen, reflect, fit it in. And so many times the conflict arises because it's my agenda and things aren't happening according to what I have perceived to be right in my mind.
And having the faith that our kids learn as much from mistakes as they do from successes. I think
Mhm.
parents are very paranoid about kids making mistakes. And they think things like failing a class. Again, I'd rather have my kid fail a high school class than fail a university class. Yeah, I guess you're going to summer school, but I so treasured the relationship over the performance goals that I was never willing to have a fight about that stuff. I really let them know that your education is your own responsibility. And my mother was a teacher and she never checked on my work. I figured it out, good enough. I have a Bachelor of Science and a Master's in Counseling. I figured out somewhere along the line how to study without a parent over my shoulder, checking my homework, correcting my papers.
I think it's the believability though. I think
Yes.
that's the key point for me is that you were buoyed with the believability from your parents.
Yes, yes. That's part of that, like setting up the pillars and the foundations from which the seeds help grow, a child with good mental health and confidence and competency and resiliency and all those things that we want, right? And I think as parents, we get a little bit too focused on the micro. Like I think of it as like a petri dish. We're the gel that we're growing these kids out of. I think about the petri dish. Like, do my kids feel loved? Do they feel valued? Do they feel that I'm a safe person to talk to? Do they know that they have unconditional love? They'll figure out all the other stuff. They're going to date stupid people. They're going to fail courses. They're going to buy dumb cars that they shouldn't have spent money on. I don't know. They're going to go out and do all their dumb things. And that's great. That's how they're going to learn, So it's a total joy now that my kids are 30 and 31 and both are getting married this year. And they did all those stupid growing up things that I did too, but they're like wonderful adults. It's so gratifying. But if you would have like just taken a snapshot of any week in grade 12, I mean, I'm pretty sure, my blood pressure would have been over the roof, but I was smart enough to bite my tongue and say, this too shall pass.
Well, it's been a real joy listening to you and diving into this topic of family meetings and all the little subsets
Yeah.
that
Mhm.
intersect with family meetings. It's just been delicious. And
Yeah.
I wanted to mention to you that we finish up our sessions typically with a reflection of, what sprouted up for me, what rose up from the ground type of thing. So, Sam, what sprouted for you?
For me, the piece that's going to stick with me the most that really is taking root is the idea of reorganizing the respect. I think that's really a stage I'm at right now with my 21-year-old in my house. And I really needed that little touch point tonight because we've been struggling a bit. So thank you for that. That has really been a huge gift for me.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that was impactful.
Allison, what about you?
I think about how I would like parents to just get started.
Mm.
Just trying to take away some of the overwhelm and to say, trust yourself and just get started. And I think that's why I like those family meetings in the beginning where they're just like, what are we going to do for family fun this weekend? Like just that, just get started. And please go visit my YouTube channel that has all those videos of my kids doing it across the years and the reason why I say that, it's not because I'm like, oh, home movies, who wants to watch other people's home movies? But it's because I think it does a good job of setting the tone. And I think getting started and getting the right tone is something that I really want to land for parents. I hope they're inspired from what we talked about.
Thanks, and we will link that in the notes to make it easy for people to find the videos. And I want to encourage everyone. We've watched them before, Samantha and I, when we were working
Together
on
on
together.
Zoom.
Yes, yeah. So, they really are, a little microscopic episode of what it's like to be in a family, and it's just your kids are being delightful kids, and we're getting the grace and the grit.
I love that, grace and grit.
Yeah. What sprouted up for me is it's really that notion of it is the long game. To just changing that mindset of like, in this moment, I've got to get them to listen, to respond, to be, to blah 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 blah. And it's not about that. It's not about that. In that moment, how am I interacting with them? Influencing a deeper understanding of relating.
Yeah. There's a managerial part of parenting, and then there's a relational part of parenting. And I think we spend a lot of time being managerial. And you've said it, Sandy, again and again, like that relational part is the sweet spot that we need to get a little bit more comfortable about getting into. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's been a sweet spot with you, Alyson. Thank you. Thanks, Sam.
Oh, thank you, ladies.
And we'll see you again on the next On the Ground Parenting. Bye.
On the Ground Parenting is a production of Muskoka Family Focus's Parent Education Program. It is made possible by the generous donations of listeners like you. If you'd like to make a donation, sponsor an episode, or just ask a question of one of our hosts, go to linktr.ee/On the Ground Parenting. On the Ground Parenting is produced and published by Red Juice Studios. To learn more, go to redjuicestudio.com. Thanks for listening.